consider the various aspects of who you are. So for me, it's like husband, I'm a father. I have a physical health side of me, a mental health side of me. There's the community aspect, philanthropy. There's the knowledge side. So like the part of me that's like a continuous learner. Consider all the various parts of who you are, write those down, and then take some time and consider what meaning or fulfillment looks like for you in each of those categories. And then from there, this is probably, I don't want to jump ahead, but this is probably your next question, I would guess. And from there, then you can set goals in that direction.
Many people want to navigate life with peace and joy, but struggle to connect to their intuition. They find themselves overwhelmed, burned out, and frustrated. My name is Francesca Phillips, and I'm obsessed with spirituality and psychology and how the two can intersect to help you live a successful and intuitive life. I believe each of us can accomplish amazing things through balance and healthy habits instead of burnout. Consider this your go-to resource for where spiritual wellness and mindful productivity meets practical wisdom. If you're craving positivity and want to know how to find the answers within instead of searching endlessly without, then you're in the right place. Get ready to feel supported and inspired. This is the Good Space Podcast. You're listening to the Good Space Podcast, episode number 52. Why choosing goals you can control is the key to achieving them with Corey Fradin. Before we dive in, I want to give my warm appreciation to our reviewer of the week, Jana Hendrickson. And they say, Francesca has chosen an array of interesting and helpful topics and practices that many can benefit from. It's easy to listen to and integrate in one's own life. I'm looking forward to hearing more. Jana, thank you for your kind words. I'm so glad that what we teach on the podcast has been easy to integrate. That is the absolute goal. I hope you continue to enjoy our topics, and I'm sending you wishes of love and abundance. Thank you for being a part of the Good Space community. If you want to be highlighted in an upcoming episode and help further the mission of the Good Space, make sure to subscribe and give us a review on Apple Podcasts so I can then highlight your review in an upcoming episode. It only takes a minute. You can pause the episode and come right back. Make sure to screenshot this episode on your phone and tag us on your Instagram story at @FindYourGoodSpace, #TheGoodSpace, to let me know that you're joining in today, as you know that I love to share those screenshots on our stories too. Welcome to the Good Space Podcast. Today we have Corey Fradin on the show. He's the founder of QuickBooost, a blog that helps you achieve your goals. Through his work, Corey shows you how to create a life of meaning and fulfillment, one of true goal success. His blog receives thousands of visitors each month, and he's been featured on sites like entrepreneur.com, MSN, Addicted to Success, Thrive Global, Elephant Journal, and many more. Corey, thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I first came across you on Medium and I loved the work you were doing. And so, I kind of reached out and we started talking from there. I started QuickBooost a few years ago. It was actually 3 years ago last week. And I started off kind of writing just personal development content. I brought on freelance writers to initially write it all for me. That was great. But after a few months, I realized, to really do well in the space, I kind of had to take it in-house really to myself and just start writing it all in my own voice and my own experiences and sharing kind of what I know and less kind of generic tips and more really specific kind of lessons that I've learned. And ever since then, I've been writing it all on my own and just growing and kind of sharing what I've experienced. And now I'm publishing one new post a day, and I've been doing that for the last 3 or 4 months now. And it's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of writing, but it's great to kind of share what I'm going through on a day-to-day basis. I get a lot of fulfillment out of writing. It's something I enjoy doing. If I didn't enjoy doing it, it'd be a completely different story. But because I love what I write about and I love kind of the process of writing, I have a great day every day kind of thing. As far as what to write about, that I am really surprised that I haven't run out of stuff to write about. I thought after a few weeks, I'd be like, I'm out of words. But kind of like how, with your husband or like a spouse or a boy, just always seem to have more and more to talk about, even though if you spend all your time together, you think you'd run out of stuff, but you just somehow find a way. It's the same thing with this. A lot of it is looking back on my last 24 hours and saying, what did I struggle with in the last 24 hours? What did I learn? Or what did I look up? What did I search for? And then how can I phrase that in a way that's helpful for my reader?
Writing and creativity, I feel, is just an expression of how we're interpreting the world or events or experiences. And then with that, the connections we're making or the realizations we're making. And it is so valuable. I mean, that's how I've learned most of what I've learned in my life is books. Those are the experiences and thoughts, information from other people that are like you and me. And so I think it's really neat to look at it that way. So you write about self-development. What specifically in self-development?
The overarching theme to everything I write is being more intentional with your time. So that ends up being things like productivity, time management, goal setting. Sometimes I talk about books, sometimes I talk about focus, but a lot of times it seems like the big two are goal setting and productivity. There's probably a healthy mix of resilience thrown in there too, and kind of getting back up when you get knocked down.
And what drew you to that? Why productivity and goal setting, and how did that fit into your life or change your life?
That's a great question. I think it helps that those are topics I've always been drawn to. When I first started QuickBoost years ago, I think I just kind of wrote about anything self-development related. So like, and it could be as far ranging as like, here's a travel list. Like, here are the things to bring when you travel to have like a great trip. Like, it was very broad. I think over time, as I've learned more what I like to write about and what my audience likes to read from me, I think it's become easier to get more specific on what I'm writing. But I really do enjoy reading and writing about productivity, goal setting. Right now I have some like 10 plus goals in my life that I'm actively working on. So it's just kind of one of those things that I had a natural interest in it. The writing just kind of ended up going in that direction. You asked a really great question in that, like, how has it changed my life? It's not really a quote, but it's a saying that I've heard a bunch, and I'm sure you've heard it too. To become really good at something, you should teach that thing, or by teaching something, you'll become really good at it. And so by writing so much about productivity and goal setting and planning, like, I feel like my life has become that much more, well, looking at productivity, that much more efficient, looking at goals like that much more fulfilled, that much more, I don't know, just intentional by writing about these things so often. And so that's been a really rewarding process that I wasn't expecting when I first set out, but I'm really thrilled that I've had that.
I know for me, I naturally enjoy productivity and all of those surrounding things like goals, because it's become a deeper spiritual practice for me. And I know there's a lot of stigma around productivity, around goal setting. So I'm curious, to you, has it also become more of a deeper, meaningful practice than the stigma that's usually around it? Because a lot of, especially my listeners and blog readers, they're very tuned into the fact that there's the difference between masculine energy and feminine energy. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but masculine being more forceful and like intellectual and like mind focused, where feminine's more like intuition and like flowing with things and letting things unfold and not forcing it so much. And so right now, I know a lot of my listeners are very much like, I need that more peaceful, flowing aspect of my life because I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling stressed. My biggest goal in talking about productivity is, how can I make this more of a spiritually rooted thing or practice? And how can I make it the actual powerful thing that it is and not what the world says it is? And so I'm curious if you have any like thoughts on the stigma around goal setting, kind of in the same vein.
This was my mindset for a super long time on the matter too. I think when you think of productivity or goal setting, I think it's easy to keep it really surface level and just say, I want to be productive because I want to get things done faster, or I want to achieve goals because I want to achieve those goals. Like, it's very like, it is what it is kind of thing. And I think that's the traditional way of looking at it. I've learned that there's really something underneath that you should be working towards. There's a reason to want to do things faster. There's a reason that you want to work towards things. And in my experience, and what I'm doing now, is everything is based on fulfillment. So the reason I want to be more productive is so that I can get through things faster, so I can work more on things that give me fulfillment. Or the goals I set for myself are all rooted in living a fulfilling, meaningful life for myself. I think the traditional way of thinking is very much like, everyone says I should set goals, so I'm going to go set goals. But I think if you take a step back and say, like, why do I want to set goals? What can these goals allow me to do? I think you can create something much more substantial for yourself. That's kind of what I write about now, is setting these goals and how to set these goals that will result in a more fulfilling life for yourself.
So basically going for the why, questioning why you want something. And I'm actually curious about your time working at a startup. I was reading how your goal was to have $100 million by 25. And I mean, hey, we've all been there. Like, we've all dreamed big. We've all been there. And so I'm just curious how you went from like that mindset to now having different goals and seeing it differently.
I totally started blushing when you mentioned that story. I was so embarrassed to write that article, but I'm happy you brought it up, because it's the truth. That was like a real time in my life, and that was really how I saw things. And it could just be like a youth thing. Like, as when you're younger, you feel like money is the thing to aspire to. And money is still something I aspire to. And it could just be from getting hit over the head so many times. You try something, you fail at it, or, you feel like you've got it worked out and then, everything goes wrong. It could just be that. But I think over time you realize the things you can and can't control, and really the things that add more meaning to your life than things that don't. When I think I said that when I was maybe like 20 or 21, when I was like, I'm going to make this much by whenever. I think at that time, money was the thing I was rooting for, because at that present time, apps were the thing. Apps are still the thing, but it was very much like Snapchat had just come out. All these apps were just like popping up, and it felt like a gold mine. And so it just kind of felt like money was the thing to aspire to. And I think really it was just a matter of failing at so many things when you realize, oh, like, even if this went really well, I don't know how happy I would have been doing it. For a long time, I wanted to move up to like Silicon Valley. I applied for jobs up there. I was really into the tech scene at startups you mentioned. And at one point I ended up working for a local tech company, and I didn't enjoy it very much. And I realized I'm so happy I didn't get any jobs up there, because I was working towards this thing. I was hoping for this thing that once I actually had it, I realized, oh, this isn't actually something that fills me up. So it really saved me a ton of time and effort and kind of struggle. And from that, I think I've just slowly worked my way towards like realizing what is, adding meaning to my life and what isn't.
The cool thing is that at least a goal gets you going, right? Because if we all knew what would make us happy without trying anything, and we just could think about it, then there wouldn't be self-help, there wouldn't be therapy. Like, we would all just be good, right? Because I can predict what's going to make me happy. But at least with a goal, it gets you going somewhere, gets you starting on some path. And then you can figure out, do I like this? Do I not like this? Like, when I was younger, I wanted to work in the music industry. Like, since I was 7 years old, I'm like, I'm going to be a singer, songwriter, backup dancer, actor, or a veterinarian. But that was my goal. And I was so determined. And I put together dancing groups in school, and I was writing songs all the time. I was taking vocal lessons. And when I was 18, I moved to Los Angeles. I networked for 6 to 8 months, got my first job working for a songwriting production house. And then I worked for a major music manager. I was moving my way up. And I even got a chance to show my boss that I could sing, because he really liked a song that I wrote. But I remember at that moment, he was like, oh, sing for me right now. And he's someone who could put me in front of anyone, any meeting, any person, any record label, it would have been done. And I remember when he told me to sing, I said, I can't. No, I don't want to. And I said, no. And I remember thinking, what the heck? What are you doing? Why did you just say no? And I realized it was because after being in the business for 6 years, I met so many people who are miserable, who I did not want to be like. And I thought, if this is going to be me in 20 years, I don't want it. I was seeing things from artists, musicians that we had to hide from the media, we had to hide from the world, that were really gross and disheartening. And it had no integrity to who I wanted to be as a person. And I'm not saying the whole industry is like that. There's one person I can think of who is a light in the industry. And I just laugh because it's oh my gosh, one person. I'm sure there are others now. But I remember at that time thinking, this was my goal. This is where I'm heading. And then now it's not what I want. And so it just it ended up being this big spiral, and I ended up leaving and then going to marketing and blah, 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 blah. But I totally relate to you on that level of having that goal, and maybe for the wrong reasons. I mean, who knows, right? It's just something you're told is good to go after. And so for anyone listening, if you have a desire, still go for it. You don't have to have it figured out right now. Look at what we both learned through going after it. The amount of things I've learned, and I still the skills and the mindset and the energy that I still can grab from that moment in my life serve so many things that I'm doing today. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but I can imagine so.
That's so powerful that you put in all that work and then you realize, oh, this isn't the place I want to end up, or this isn't adding the meaning to my life that I want to attain. I think that's so powerful. You brought up applying those lessons to the present day. And yeah, absolutely. Especially the times that were brutal. I often look back and say, man, my low days today are better than my high days in the past, so it's good to know that things just continue to improve. And to touch on another point you were making too, of still pursuing those dreams, those ambitions. Yeah, definitely. And I think just checking in with yourself along the way and saying, am I not necessarily happy, because happiness kind of comes and goes. It's, it's fleeting, but is this something that's adding purpose and meaning to my life? Am I excited to get out of bed to go do this thing today? I think questioning that, you don't have to do it every day, but if you do it every once in a while, just checking in with yourself, I think that will help steer you in a good direction.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up, because you're right. Happiness is very fickle and it won't be something that's going to show up all the time, but checking in with yourself. And I know, like, over the years, I've learned too, that sometimes when you're feeling not as great about what you feel is your purpose or meaning, that sometimes you just don't like a certain part, or maybe your system isn't that great and you need better organization, and that would fix it. Like, so there's so many like things that go into figuring out why maybe you're not happy. And so don't just like quit at the first sign of like, oh, okay, I'm bored or whatever. Like, it's a whole thing we could go into. Do you struggle with time management and feel overwhelmed by everything you have to get done? And have you tried sticking to a regular schedule but get pulled every which way by shiny objects and demands from others? If you want to simplify your life and get better at being decisive, finally getting productivity down in your life, then this message is for you. I have released a new book called How to Not Lose Your Shit, the ultimate productivity guide for entrepreneurs. This book gives all the methods that I have taught my private clients, my followers for many years, on how to see results in your business and to get more peace in your life. I've had so many entrepreneurs say how overwhelmed they feel and drained and burned out. And so I teach them a framework and different techniques that help them to take back their peace and to start loving running their business again and to start feeling human again. If any of this sounds like you and any of it sounds good to you, then make sure you buy this book now. It is workbook style, so it's a roadmap, and it gives you a link as well to a download that you can easily print and use as you're implementing everything in the book. And it's very short. It's probably like 60 to 70 pages. So it's very short because I only wanted to give you information that was actually useful to you. And I throw in a few stories as well from people that I've worked with. So a lot of good things in there. Make sure you buy it now if this sounds like something you need. And if you have any questions, feel free to direct message me or email me. And I hope it helps. I think it's interesting because in both of our cases, I feel like having the goal alone isn't enough. Like, anyone can have a goal, but if having a goal was enough, then every person who applied for a job, they would all get it, but not everyone gets it. So it's like, obviously the goal itself isn't the only thing. And so I feel like the why, like you said, and the meaning and the purpose is so important, because guess what? I spent 6.5 years of my life granted, I love music, so that was enough of a why for me, but the actual like lifestyle of it, I think I didn't want it for the right reasons. I just wanted it because I thought, oh, you love music, this is what you're supposed to do. But it didn't add purpose and meaning like I thought it did. So I spent 6.5 years and then I end up leaving it. And then like you like spend however many years and then you end up leaving it. So it's like, it's actually worth doing the work now to figure out your why and to have a deeper connection, because maybe you'll get to what you're actually supposed to be doing quicker.
So I was talking about my experience with like tech and how I wanted to, the whole startup thing, build the apps and move up to Silicon Valley, the whole thing. When I stopped working for that local tech company, I realized, oh, it's not tech that I like. I like building things. And that really got me thinking of like, oh, I like entrepreneurship. I like starting. And I had already started an app company prior to that, but I thought it was just, I like the tech aspects, because after that I joined a different tech startup and I'm like, oh, I like technology. I like, apps and the whole deal, but it was really, I like building things. And so just realizing that, kind of building off those previous maybe mistakes or previous directions, you can realize like, oh, this is the aspect that I do like. And I want to continue to build on top of that.
So if someone came to you and said, I don't know what gives me meaning and purpose, what would be the first step for them?
The first thing I recommend doing is sitting down, and I often recommend writing this down. Consider the various aspects of who you are. So for me, it's like husband. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I have a physical health side of me, a mental health side of me. There's the community aspect, philanthropy. There's the knowledge side. So like the part of me that's like a continuous learner. Consider all the various parts of who you are. Write those down, and then take some time and consider what meaning or fulfillment looks like for you in each of those categories. And it may not come to you initially. And if it doesn't, you don't have to write anything down. for instance, like community right now, I just have like a big TBD next to it because I'm not really sure. Life's been kind of crazy and community stuff hasn't really been the same. So I'm not sure what that one is, but for other categories, there will be things that call to you. So write those down. And then from there, this is probably, I don't want to jump ahead, but this is probably your next question, I would guess. And from there, then you can set goals in that direction. So for me, speaking of like knowledge, a meaningful life as someone that's a continuous learner is someone that's constantly reading books, listening to audiobooks, taking courses, because I like to learn it. It adds something to my life. So once I figured out this is an area of my life, this is what fulfillment looks like to me in that area, then I went about setting a goal in that direction. So one of my current goals that I've had for well over a year now is to complete at least 2 books a month. And I've done that last year. I think I completed like 52, 53 books. And this year I'm on track to get through a bunch more. So that's just an example of figuring out kind of the different aspects of who you are, figuring out what fulfillment looks like for you in those aspects, and then setting goals in those directions.
Before you said, read books or Audible or all those different things, what is it that you said before? There was like an identity statement that you said before.
Right. So like, what would a meaningful life look like for me as a lifelong learner? And then I ended up saying something like someone that's constantly learning through books, audiobooks, and like courses. Yeah.
I wanted to like either repeat that or grab that out of what you said, because I love that it starts with an identity. I think that's so much more powerful because I feel like emotion is attached to that. And that's more powerful than intellectual or like outcome based things. And so the fact that you want to be a lifelong learner, it's almost like what James Clear said about earning that identity. So you're like, if I want the identity of a lifelong learner, how do I earn that to myself and become that lifelong learner? And so now your goals of, the books every month and like different ways of consuming those books to make it happen, you're now believing that you are that lifelong learner. And so do you feel like having that identity component to it and attaching the feeling of it?
I see it as almost like that's the direction I'm heading. So I know what fulfillment looks like for me in that direction. And then I set goals to get there. So it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like I know where I want to go. I just have to use the compass to like navigate me there. And then the process of setting the goals, putting the goals in place, then helps you become that thing. So like speaking of James Clear and habits, and I think this is definitely something that maybe one of the productivity books out there, we're saying that there's 2 different types of goals. There's the achievement goal and there's a habit goal. So like an achievement goal is like a one-time thing. You're working towards a single achievement. So I'm going to run a half marathon on October 5th. A habit goal is a continuous thing, like you're developing a habit. It's saying, I'm going to run a mile every single day. Those are the 2 types of goals. They're both great. Personally, I like doing habit goals a lot more than achievement goals, or I like setting those for myself because, like you were saying, with a habit goal, the consistency develops that lifestyle. You become that person that you want to be. So in the case of the achievement goal, running that half marathon, when October comes and goes, you are a person that ran 1 half marathon. With the habit goal, October can come and go. It could be October next year. You are a runner. You are someone that runs day after day. So it becomes much more ingrained with who you are. And so that's why I like habit goals. So that's like when it comes to my reading goal, read 2 books a month. It's not read 50 books by the end of the quarter, because when the quarter is done, then I'm back to watching TV. Where I read 2 books a month, it's continuous, it's ongoing. You continue to build into those levels of fulfillment for yourself.
You hit the nail on the head so perfectly with that. It actually explains so much because I'm the same way. Habit goals to me are more fulfilling and energizing than achievement goals. I know that you talk about a few steps, right? So we've already kind of went over it. Why don't you share about the idea of choosing goals that you can control?
So I've been setting goals for a long time. So like something like 7 or 8 years. And at the beginning, I did the very standard thing. Like I want to lose this much weight by this time. Like that's a classic goal that everybody sets. Over many years of not hitting that weight loss goal, I realized I cannot control what the scale says. Like I can influence it, but I can't control what it says. And so every time I miss it, I just get down on myself or I feel bummed, but I'm putting in the work. Like I'm still doing the things I'm supposed to be doing. I'm just not getting the results. So with time, I've realized setting goals within your control allows you to kind of celebrate the things that you are doing. It's not saying I'm going to weigh this much by this time. It's saying I'm going to run this many miles. I'm going to, I don't know, fast for this many days. Not to say you need to fast or whatever. It's just by setting goals within your control, you kind of take the reins and say, I'm going to celebrate the things that I'm doing well. Your reason for doing it may be to get leaner or to put on muscle or to read more. But by putting it within your control, you really have a say over it. And that's really powerful. We were talking about reading a second ago, and a good example is a goal within your control is like the one I mentioned for myself. So I'm going to read 2 books a month. A goal outside of your control is I'm going to read more books than my wife this month. Like I could read 100 books in a month, but if she reads 101, I'm not going to celebrate that as an awesome thing. I'm going to say, oh, I lost. So by taking control of that goal that you're actually working on, you give yourself the power to actually achieve some really great stuff.
It's a great example.
Competition ones are a great example, or even like weight loss. Well, like an example would be like a goal not within your control is saying, I'm going to lose 5 pounds by the end of the month. Like you can try, you feel like you have control over that, but you don't know how your body's going to process that piece of chicken. What you do have control over is like, I'm going to count my calories 5 days a week. I'm going to under this many grams of carbohydrates a day, this many times a week, whatever. Or for like, I don't know, like you could do it for planting. Like you can't say, if you set a goal, like my plant is going to blossom by the end of the week. Like you don't have any control. All you can control is like, I'm going to water it once a week, or I'm going to like wipe off its leaves like every 3 days kind of thing. These are things within your control. And the reason why you're doing it is so that the plant grows and blossoms. But really, if it doesn't, you did everything you could, and you should celebrate that you stuck to it. You watered the plant, you wiped off the leaves. Maybe it didn't sprout the way you wanted to, but you stuck what you said you did, what you said you were going to do. And because of that, now you're filled with this kind of like this accomplishment. Like I did this great thing. And though I didn't get the result I wanted, I'm still feeling really good about myself. And I'm going to set different goals to maybe hit this in a different way next time.
I think you just explained manifesting in a goal orientation. The core tenet and like principle, I feel like, of that law of attraction and manifesting is releasing outcomes. And what you just described to me just gave me like a visual of that concept of like, you just focus on what you can control and then feel good about that. And then whatever comes from that is just like a bonus, but it doesn't mean that you take away the goodness and the value of what you're doing. So that was really neat. So I'm glad you shared that. And I wonder as well, how many people maybe stopped doing something they love doing, or they felt like something's wrong with them and they give up their New Year's resolutions because maybe the goal isn't something they could have controlled. Like, I'm so curious now how many of my goals in the past that I just was like, I'll never do it, is because I was making the wrong kind of goal.
Absolutely. And 2 examples come to mind really quick. One is, so for me, I mentioned like my goal for QuickBooost, my blog right now, is to publish 1 new article every day. That is a goal fully within my control. I mean, for the most part, and things obviously come up in life, but within my control, that's pretty much it. If I would have set a goal to say, I'm going to make this much money by April 1st or May 1st or whatever, and I didn't get it, I would have quit, and then I would just be done writing. That would be the whole thing. But instead, I'm celebrating the thing that I'm doing, and that's allowed me to keep going, to stay motivated. Another example that comes to mind is I'm in the process of like trying to get a little bit leaner. So I'm trying to influence my body fat. I set out like a goal related to like carbohydrates. So I'm going to eat this many carbohydrates a day, whatever. I ended up gaining a bunch of weight. The result didn't end up being all that fantastic, but I did what I said I was going to do. I ate how I said I was going to eat for the amount of days I said I was going to do it, for the amount of months I said I was going to do it for. So the work I put in was great. The result didn't get where I wanted to, but I was able to learn from it. And from that, I didn't quit. I didn't just like stop doing what I was doing. I just now set a different goal in its place. And now I'm moving in that direction without a loss of motivation.
And it's so crazy because I see that type of pattern in business as well. Like a lot of successful entrepreneurs, I'm thinking of the co-founder of Netflix. He was on Tom Bilyeu's podcast, I believe. And he was saying, because they just kept testing, changing their goal, like reiterating things and really doing that, that's the reason why it became what it was. And so I love picking out the like foundational patterns that weave through all of life, no matter what it is that you're focusing on. And so that's really profound that you pointed that out. So, okay. So the first step would be choosing a goal that you can control, which you did a great job clarifying that. And then I feel like second is to make a plan. And you mentioned tactic and schedule planning.
I'm a big proponent of planning. I know not everyone is as into planning as I am, or maybe you are, but I really love to plan things. And I find that by doing so, you really can kind of back to control, you can really influence your day in a really positive sort of manner. So what I do every Sunday is I sit down and I plan out my week, kind of a high level plan. So I say on Monday, I have these two meetings. On Tuesday, I want to do this and that. And Wednesday, I look at my goals and I say, what days do I want to work on the goals and when am I going to work on them? So for example, I have a goal right now to go to the beach twice a month because I live relatively close to the beach. And I want to make sure I, take advantage of that. And so I'll look on my calendar and say, okay, my Wednesday's pretty light. Let me plan right now to go to the beach on Wednesday. The weather was supposed to be great. And then, so I'll keep it pretty high level. And then for the following day, so if today's Sunday, for the Monday, that's tomorrow, I'll do a really detailed plan. So like I'm going to wake up at this time, breakfast, drop off my daughter at daycare, work from this time to this time, be really specific. And that way I know that I have enough time for every single thing that I want to do in that day. So it's kind of like going back to productivity. It's making sure that I have enough time for, but I'm also moving swiftly through these things that all inevitably give me fulfillment. So it's like exercising and writing and all these different, playing with my daughter, all these different aspects that add meaning to my life. I'm making sure I have time for all of them.
I'm the same way so every Friday I look at my next week and I have my theme days. So each day has its own theme. I schedule in my morning routine first before anything else. Then I schedule in my workouts because I know I don't schedule calls until 2 p.m. or later. So I already know, okay, great. Anytime before then is free for me to put exercise, things that are, like you said, fulfilling and meaningful. And so I feel like by doing that, I actually do it, because otherwise, the ego and just the instant gratification monkey within each of us, I would rather just grab my phone and scroll on social media. If I have to sit there and think, what should I do next? I'll just do the most low hanging fruit thing that I can get. And so it's almost like by writing it out, I don't have to think anymore. And I'm actually, by not thinking, doing what's best for me. And so, yes, big proponent of that. And for people who may be listening and thinking, oh, that's too masculine for me, that's too like forceful or just a lot for me to handle at this moment, I would suggest just picking 3 things that you're like, if I went to the beach this week, or if I exercised or started working on that book, just look at your week ahead or next week and just block off an hour or 2 and just test that out and see how that feels. And like really take in the emotion of what it feels like to have work towards something that's meaningful for you. And then hopefully you can build up from there in scheduling in things more. I feel like it's such a really powerful practice. So the third thing that I noted from something you wrote was what to do when the time comes to do a goal and you don't do it. So what do you do then? And I know you talked about removing friction ahead of time and like all those different things. So how do you handle like, okay, I blocked out time to write my book or to start this thing, and now the time is here and I just went on Instagram or answered emails and now the time is gone.
Motivation fades really quickly, at least in my case. I find motivation to last for about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. Like whenever you set a new goal, like it only lasts for, like I said, a couple of weeks. And then it's just, then you're just stuck doing the work. And so how do you ensure that you continue to do the work day after day after day? That's the hard thing. So there's a bunch of tactics and I'm happy to go into those. There's also kind of like the way, what we were just talking about, like structuring your day in a way, like this is the next thing. You don't really have any room to think about it. It's just the next inevitable part of your day. But tactics wise, yeah, there's a bunch you can do. You talked about removing friction. So making it as easy as possible for you to do the thing that you're supposed to do. So in the case of, I had a buddy who mentioned that he would often procrastinate by going on YouTube. So like he had all this work to do on, I think he was starting a blog. So he had all this work to do on his blog, but he kept drifting off over to YouTube. And it was just like destroying all of his time. He was spending all of his like day there. So one thing I suggested to him was setting his home screen as his like blog. So like every time he opens up like a new Chrome window, like it takes you directly to his blog post. So like it's the first thing he sees. If you are struggling to exercise, this is a common one, like wear your clothes, because we all work from home now. So wear your clothes that you're going to exercise in. So, and keep your shoes nearby. So when it's time, or even work outside if you can. So when the time comes, you just stand up and you just go. Make it as, or like in the case of me and reading, I find that it's a lot easier to play on my phone than it is to read a book. Even though I really enjoy reading, it's just like one takes more effort than the other. And so in my living room, I keep a book right on the table, I will often lay on the couch, and instead of playing with my phone, the book is right within arm's reach. And so I can just reach over, grab it. And but if I had to go into another room, go grab the book, figure out where I was, get comfortable again, that amount of effort, even though it's so minuscule, it would prevent me from achieving that thing. So removing those extra steps.
It's so funny because I do the exact same thing with my books. Exact same things. I have 2 right on the coffee table for that exact same reason. And I have my pencil on top of it. So it's like, there's no excuse. You can write your notes, you can underline things. Let's go. So I absolutely love that. And it's funny because that's also a tenet of marketing. I'm a copywriter and I have a copywriting business. And the whole idea is to create the least amount of friction for your buyer as possible. So like, how many clicks do they need to take to sign up for something or to buy something? And like, that can be the difference between converting way more people and not. So it's basically like human nature. What's the easiest route here?
Right, exactly. And I remember James Clear, because you mentioned him a while back, and I remember he was saying to break bad habits, although this is kind of irrelevant, but it's on topic. To break bad habits, you just add friction. So like in the case of like, if you watch too much TV, like put your TV in the closet. So it's a real pain to go get that TV,
That's how I am with junk food. There will be seasons where we just have it in the house and I'm like going through things faster than I normally would. But typically, if I'm craving something enough that I put my shoes on, and it's New York City, so everything's 10 times harder to begin with. So if I have to put on my shoes, if it's winter, my coat, and I'm getting my wallet and I'm walking 4 blocks to go to the grocery store, I am not going to feel guilty if I buy a bag of Doritos. I am not going to feel guilty for getting soda, because the likelihood that I actually take the effort to do it is much smaller. So I'm just like, whatever, I must really want this if I'm doing this.
Yeah. Plus you have to like navigate getting there. So that like you're walking there. So that burns energy. Like in my case, we try not to even keep like any junk food in our home, because I'm just like, I'll find it. And no matter, like if it doesn't, like you can hide in the closet, like I'm going to get to it. So that's why we add so much friction that it's not even an option, and I don't want to drive to get it.
There you go. No, exactly. I feel the same way. Like chocolate covered pretzels are that for me. Like they're literally gone day one, because I'm just like, this is not stopping and I'm just going to keep going. All right, Cory, thank you for taking the time to chat with us and sharing your thoughts and your knowledge. I'm so glad that we met and that you were on the show. If people wanted to find you and read your blog post or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. And again, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. So I appreciate the opportunity. You can find me at my blog, QuickBooost.com, and that's Boost has 3 O's in it. So don't forget that third O. That's pretty much where I spend all my time. I'm not really on social media. If you want to start a conversation or you have any questions about the stuff we talked about, I love talking about this stuff. So my email is Cory@QuickBooost.com, or you can find it all over my website. It's everywhere. Feel free to start a conversation or ask any questions. And yeah, if anyone's interested, I have a free downloadable ebook talking about kind of more of this stuff. And I also have a course that goes into it in even more detail.
Perfect. We will make sure to link all of that in the show notes so you can easily find him. Cory, thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Now it's time for an affirmation. I embrace productivity as a spiritual practice and base my goals on true fulfillment in every aspect of my life.
If you found today's tips inspiring or thought-provoking, share it right now on social media and make sure to tag me at Francesca A. Phillips or at Find Your Good Space, and also weigh in the comment section at findyourgoodspace.com. You can find links in the show notes. And if you have a spiritual or mindfulness problem that you want me to unpack on an upcoming The Good Space episode, or an awesome manifesting story you want to share, give my podcast phone line a ring right now at 917-719-0867. Also, don't forget to download my free morning routine guide. It's what helped me reduce my anxiety, increase productivity, and so much more. The link to everything I mentioned is in the show notes. See you soon.